was always the person planning things. Like for prom, I was the one that would go to the tuxedo shop and say, all right, if I get 20 guys to rent tuxedos from here, can I get mine for free? My parents didn't have much money, and so I had to figure out how to pay for all this stuff. So I think I was ambitious in different things. I was more ambitious about enjoying life and having fun versus focusing on school. I think the inflection point was I was probably immature, didn't realize what I needed to do to succeed in life.
What did the role of money have in your life growing up? You mentioned that you didn't grow up with a lot of money. How did that impact you positively or negatively?
I think back then it impacted me.
In this episode, we sit down with Matt DeGraw. Matt shares how curiosity shaped his career, from taking pay cuts to learn to intentionally surrounding himself with people smarter than him. He reflects on why timing and luck play a bigger role in success than most people admit, and what it really takes to stay present for family while spending most of his life on the road. This conversation follows the long arc of a career and the life built alongside it.
Both of our daughters are profoundly deaf. My oldest daughter, Peyton, was born without hearing, and Macy, my younger one, had hearing in one of her ears until she was about 20 months old. For some reason, lost it.
What were some of the challenges of raising two daughters without hearing?
The challenge is dealing with how you think your child should be raised and how your child should learn versus the school system. Then the second challenge is, how do you get their friends to communicate with them so that they can have a peer group?
As you were talking, what I was thinking about was how much you were doing at the time. I imagine like traveling all this time for work and growing your career and putting your kids in soccer, getting them to the level where they're competing in the Olympics and learning this new form of speech. I'm struggling to understand, but you managed your time and managed all of this.
Really it's just because
Property managers lose hours chasing rent, while delinquency and filing costs add up to massive losses. The financial impact? Millions in unpaid rent sold to collections agencies that recover just 20 to 30%, while taking a huge cut. Now, the Kelsey you trust for leasing helps you recover more rent in-house, reducing reliance on agencies and maximizing revenue. With Collections AI, Kelsey automates rent and move-out collections, from the first missed payment to move-out, while ensuring compliance across jurisdictions. Easily train and set up Kelsey on your company's collections process, including CARES and state-regulated workflows. She doesn't just set reminders. Kelsey answers resident questions, tracks promise to pay dates, and follows up persistently to keep payments on track. Need oversight? Corporate teams can monitor collections in real time with Zuma's dashboard, while site teams use the Chrome Assistant to track payments and even respond as Kelsey when needed. Kelsey also evaluates resident risk with AI, providing instant insights to help you make smarter renewal decisions. The impact? Doubles collections velocity, reduces filings, cuts site team workload by 85%. Stop leaving rent revenue on the table. Let Zuma's Collections AI handle the heavy lifting while you focus on what matters. Get started today.
How do you manage to maintain your health while traveling so much?
So 16 years ago, so I've been traveling for, 21 years. And 16 years ago, I'd put on 30 pounds and thought I was in shape. I was, working out what I thought was working out. This is back when you took pictures with your digital camera but the screen was only 2 inches, and then you still had to get home and develop them. So I developed some pictures after my wife and I went to Mexico, and I realized I had gone the wrong way. I was out of shape. And my grandfather died really early of a heart attack at 72. And so I figured I'd better change some habits. So I got really serious about my workout regimen and just said, hey, I'm working out every day, every morning, whether I'm in a hotel or not, going to work out every day. So every morning I wake up at the hotel, I go to the fitness center and work out. And I started doing CrossFit back then as well. So at the hotels, I make up my own CrossFit workout. And then I got rid of a few things in my diet. I stopped eating sugar. I haven't had candy or dessert for 16 years. I stay away from pasta. I only eat pizza on Super Bowl Sunday because it's my favorite food. So I just set some things that I knew I could stick with. It's not super, like I still eat chips and salsa and some bad things, but for the most part, I just try and watch what I eat. So if you go out to a restaurant, I'd usually just pick the healthiest thing on the menu, whether it's a steak or the chicken.
Yeah.
And I do eat a sandwich every day for lunch, but I try to eat no bread at breakfast and no bread at dinner.
So 16 years ago, you were saying that you were working out, but your diet wasn't dialed in. So you thought,
I was working out, I was like lifting,
okay,
but I wasn't doing anything intense.
yeah. So you weren't really working. You weren't doing like a cardiovascular workout or anything like that. So then now at the hotel gyms, it's a mix between weights and cardio.
Yeah, so it's like a high intensity training or cross. I do CrossFit, so you can do a lot of CrossFit workouts with dumbbells, and there's a lot of burpees involved and a lot of body weight stuff, or do 400 meters on the treadmill and then do a bunch of stuff, and then 400 meters on the treadmill and a bunch of stuff. So I mix it up.
And when you say you haven't eaten dessert in 16 years, are you being facetious, or you actually have?
That's serious now.
You haven't you haven't like
No ice cream, no cake, no pie, nothing.
So I'm curious about that. Are you somebody, what that tells me, and it kind of reminds me of me in some ways, where I find it easier to completely remove something rather than moderate. I guess I have like an addictive personality. So I like go all into things and I get obsessed about things. And it becomes my identity to not do something. So for example, if I'm not drinking, it's now like my identity. So I'm not going to have a sip because it's just easier. Why is it so black and white for you? Do you think it's similar?
No, I don't think I have an addictive personality. I could have a bite of ice cream right now and I wouldn't eat ice cream for another month. It's just the craving is gone. And so why? I guess just why?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't appeal to me. So I don't think I have an addictive personality though.
Where did that level of discipline come from?
I have no idea. I didn't know I had it in me. I didn't. I think that it was really hard those first 90 days to stick to a new workout schedule, a harder workout schedule, and a better nutrition plan. Those first 90 days were really hard, but I lost 30 pounds, right? I weigh 150 pounds right now. I'm not a very big human, but I weighed 180 pounds. And so dropping that 30 pounds, and it was, I could see definition, like I had abs again. And so I think it was just more of an addiction to liking what I looked like and liking how I felt, and just don't want to go back. So I don't know.
And you don't track any of your calories or anything like that?
I did, not anymore. Not anymore. Now I just pretty much know what the calorie intake is.
Yeah.
But I tracked it religiously for several years through an app, MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
So MyFitnessPal was awesome because you could go to, like, if you were at PF Chang's for a business dinner or Outback Steakhouse or whatever, you could pull up the menu and the menu would tell you which was the highest in sodium, which had the most calories. So you could essentially pick the best thing on the menu. And that's what I started doing.
Yeah. What I do now, I never track my calories or anything like that because I just found it kind of annoying. But recently I have been tracking only because ChatGPT has gone so good, where what I've basically done is I've created this like custom GPT where I'll put in the number of calories I want to eat in the macro split. And now what you can do is if I'm at a restaurant, I'll just take a picture of the menu and ask it to tell me what to eat based on what I need for my macros.
Wow.
Which is really convenient. So even with tracking, I just take pictures of things and it's fairly accurate and it's become so much easier.
Yeah.
So if you want to try that, it's been really helpful. Just going to
I probably should do that because I want to get really strict again now that I just turned 50 a couple of months ago. So I'm like, maybe I should get really strict again for like 90 days and see what I could do.
Yeah.
But that would be much easier than trying to find it on an app.
It's so easy. Yeah. And the reason why I like it is because it's just so easy to actually do. You can just take a picture of the menu. I even do this with, let's say I'm with a group of like 5 people and I'm ordering for the table. I'll just take a picture of the menu and be like, give me an order for 5 people.
Really?
With appetizers and entrees, and make sure it has enough protein or something. And it'll just give you a custom order. And I just do that with the waiter or waitress. It's really cool.
Wow, I didn't know that you could do that.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Salt Lake City or Utah for? Did you grow up here?
Yeah, I was born and raised here. Yeah, I was born maybe 20 minutes from where we're sitting. So lived here my entire life. There were a couple of years I grew up Mormon, and so I spent 2 years living in Mexico. But other than that, I've been in Utah.
For your what is it called again when you
A mission?
for your mission? Yeah, you were in Mexico.
I was.
What was that like?
It was hard. It was good. It was, I was 19 years old, right out of high school, and living in a different world basically, and not understanding a language. So it was hard at first, and then it was great.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I'm one of 9 kids, but only 2 of those are full, same mom, same dad. My parents both had previous marriages before they married each other, and my mom had 2 boys, my dad had 3 girls and a boy, and then when they married each other, they had me and my 2 little brothers.
Wow. And where do you sit in the age?
So I'm 7th. I'm the 7th.
7th youngest.
Yeah, but the oldest of those 3. So I'm kind of, towards the bottom as far as age goes, but also the oldest of those 3 that I really grew up with.
What was it like growing up with so many siblings?
Well, for the most part, it was just the 3 of us that I can remember because
In the household.
yeah, my mom's boys lived with us, but her oldest son moved out when I was really young, so I don't really remember him living there. And then her younger son, Rob, moved out when I was 11. So it was really only 4 of us. So it wasn't that big of a family, but at Christmas we were always together. So it was a blast.
What did you, so growing up, how accustomed were you to school and academics, and how, I'm trying to understand how, because right now when I look at you, you come across as somebody who's extremely disciplined and, dialed in. Did you have similar characteristics when you were younger?
No, it's probably the opposite. It's probably the opposite. I don't know. It depends. It depended on what I cared about. It's an interesting question. I was kind of a goof off growing up. I was a class clown. I barely graduated high school because you needed citizenship credits, and those were based on if you were tardy, if you were gone, if you were talking too much in class. And luckily, I was able to convince my English teacher to sign off on some things that I did outside of school to make up for those bad credits. And it was at the 11th hour when she signed the paper, or I wouldn't have graduated high school.
How did you come up with?
So I coached Little League football. I played football my whole life, and I also coached Little League football all 3 years of high school. And so when I found out that I didn't have enough citizenship credits, I went to her and I said, but I've been coaching Little League football for 3 years. I thought that was good. She said, no, that's not on the list of what's okay. Like, it's not approved. And I lied to her and I said, no, you told me that it was approved. As I was basically saying, look, I got to graduate. I have grades to graduate. And I thought this was, community service. So, this is before cell phones and internet, right? It's 1994. And so she goes, well, give me the phone number to the head coach. So luckily I remembered his phone number. I don't remember how I remembered his phone number, but I remembered it and gave it to her. I didn't know if she got in contact with him. I showed up to graduation and got my diploma. So after graduation, I ran into him and he said, yeah, she called me and So he told her the truth was that I coached, and so she let me graduate.
If you weren't very like studious or you kind of just had fun, I'm still trying to understand what was the pivotal moment or inflection point when you started to take work seriously and you wanted to, be ambitious and things like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as I look back on it, so my dad was an elementary school principal and my mom was a teacher. And I think I just, I don't know whether I just didn't want to behave because of that. I mean, my dad, I knew how to read and write at age 5. And, my dad was always adamant about making sure that we, learned and my mom made me play the piano at a young age. So I don't know if it was just, I was just bored. And that made me not want to focus. And I just never did homework. I would get B's, not A's. I just would rather have fun. But I was always the person planning things. Like I was like for prom, I was the one that would go to the tuxedo shop and say, all right, if I get 20 guys to rent tuxedos from here, can I get mine for free? And so then I'd go get 20 guys to get, because my parents didn't have much money. And so I had to figure out how to pay for all this stuff. And so I think I was ambitious in different things. And, I was always the one planning dates, like with girlfriends and what we would do. And just had a big group of friends that were always doing stuff and planning stuff. So I think I was just ambitious in different things. I was more ambitious about enjoying life and having fun versus focusing on school. I think the inflection point was I was probably immature, didn't realize what I needed to do to succeed in life. And when I think the inflection point was probably sometime during that Mormon mission in Mexico, just realizing that, I think at some point you just realize, man, you got to get serious. And so when I came home from that, I started going to school at the University of Utah, just made sure I hung out with the right kids that I assumed were smarter than me. Made sure that, I studied with them so that I could get A's. I had to pay for my own college. And so I think paying for my own college made me realize that I needed to get my money's worth. And so I wanted to get good grades so that I could, hopefully go to business school. And so I would just hang out with these kids that had goals of going to business school. Some of my friends went to really prestigious schools. And so I was, hoping to ride their coattails. And as far as thought process goes and strategy, their parents were probably a little bit different than my parents as far as guiding them. I didn't really get a lot of guidance from my parents as far as what I should do.
Why do you think that is, given they were teachers and principals?
I don't know. I mean, my dad was adamant that we went to college and he wanted us to become doctors or lawyers, but there was no, these are the steps. This is what you have to do. You got to, there was just no direction really in that regard. I just don't think he knew. I don't think he knew. I just think he knew, he grew up on a beet farm and, 60 miles from here and he went to school and it worked out for him. And so he just, I think, figured, stay on the path, go to school and it'll work out for you. Whereas my friends, their parents had strategies, like they were talking to the deans of business schools. What do you need on your resume? And so then I would listen to them and a couple of my friends had talked to the dean of the Northwestern Business School and he had talked to them about what they needed on their resume. So we were all majoring in Spanish and he recommended everybody get double majors, not just a Spanish major, but that the Spanish major would be a really good difference maker in applying. So I decided to double major in economics and Spanish. Unfortunately, I still need 3 classes to get that double major in economics. I stopped going to school because we were having a baby, and I just decided to stop going and focus on a job. But yeah, so I was just learning from my friends whose parents I think were putting them on the right path and giving them the right guidance. And so I would just, making sure I was learning from them.
Yeah. Did you have any resentment, I guess, like seeing that all your friends' parents were so involved with, their kids and trying to optimize for the best education? And I guess in your experience, you didn't have the same. Was there any like sort of resentment or?
I didn't have resentment. I just realized, I actually realized at a young age, this sounds stupid, but I realized my dad wasn't like that smart, like that savvy as far as that goes. So I didn't have any resentment. It's just, I'd probably just get frustrated with him, but he is who he is. And he had a lot of really good qualities too that I appreciated. But yeah, it's a good question. Maybe there was some resentment and I just, need to go to a doctor and cry it out. But no, it was more, my dad was always trying to make sure that, he raised us in neighborhoods that would make us better. So, I think when we moved from the first neighborhood I was born into the other one, he could barely afford the mortgage, interest rates. This is in 1986. I think interest rates were really high. I think he bought the house for $155,000 and I think the mortgage was like around $1,000 a month, but my mom had to go back to work to help pay the bills but he knew it was the right neighborhood, and so those kids I'm telling you about were kids that grew up in that neighborhood. And so I think he was just trying to do what was best, even though he didn't know. He just knew environment mattered. So I don't know if I had resentment because I saw him trying to make sure he put us in the right position and he just didn't have the knowledge to know, like they never looked at my schedule for high school. I signed up for chemistry my sophomore year of high school, and I didn't even have the math equivalency to understand that class. So I got a D, right? But my parents should be like, no, dude, you don't have the math skills. Like you need 2 more years of math to take that chemistry class. And so anyway.
Yeah. If you felt that, it's kind of interesting, right? My parents moved from India when they were in their 20s. My dad came here for his master's, and as a result, never really did the whole undergrad thing. And they were somewhat involved, but I wouldn't say like super involved, maybe with me. And it's funny because I see, for me personally, I would use, when I was going to school, it was the internet, right? Like using the internet to like learn. YouTube was a big thing for me. And that's where when people asked me who my mentors were, I would kind of just refer to the internet as a whole because I would learn from all these different people and all these different books. For you, if you felt your parents weren't mentors in that regard, what was the mentorship that you were looking up to at the time?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know who I was looking up to. I was probably looking up to some of my friends' parents that were successful, and I was probably looking up to them. I was probably looking up to my older brothers. 2 of my older brothers were on paths to be successful, and so I was probably looking up to them a little bit. Yeah.
What did the role of money have in your life growing up? You mentioned that you didn't grow up with a lot of money. How did that impact you positively or negatively?
I think back then it impacted me negatively. My high school year, my senior year of high school, I did not dare to ask my dad for $50 for cleats. So I found some cleats of a graduating senior and just used those. And looking back, they were probably the wrong cleats for the position I was playing. So there were some negative things in that regard, but I think overall was a real positive. I had a paper out since from 11 to 15. Started working, at Little Caesars after that, Foot Locker after that. I've always had a job.
From 11 to 15, you said?
Yeah, from 11 to 15, I had a paper out. And then at 15, I started getting real jobs. So I think that, maybe at that time it was negative, but I always found a way to, go on dates and pay for things. Like I said, got my tuxedo for free for prom, and So I think not having money was a really positive thing. I grew up in a neighborhood where my friends had money, and I never felt like we grew up in a neighborhood, I think, where there were a lot of haves and lower middle class, but everyone was friends with each other. Like there wasn't any like, I'm rich, I can't hang out with you type attitude at our school. Everyone was just friends with everybody. And so we made it work. So it didn't affect me negatively at all, I think, based on who I grew up with.
So you end up go to college, double majoring. You didn't finish one of the majors, but you got your degree.
Got my degree, yeah.
And then what happened after that?
So my plan was to go to business school, like I said. And so I started leasing apartments while I was going to college. Before that, I was processing applications for apartments. This guy would process applications for all of the Archstone communities in Salt Lake, and he hired me to process those. So I was leasing apartments and going to school, and became a property manager with Wasatch, which is a company here in Salt Lake, and was a manager until I graduated. And then when I graduated, I took a job at a startup software company down in Linden, Utah, which is about an hour from here, and wanted to work for a startup company in inside sales to put that on my resume for business school. And so as soon as I graduated, gave notice to Wasatch, took this job with the startup, was doing inside sales for them. And one of my really good friends from junior high and high school, Jeff Polton, and I were talking about what I was doing. And, this guy, he went to Chicago Law, really smart kid. And he's like, well, why did you leave the apartment industry? And I'm like, because I don't want to be an apartment manager the rest of my life. I need to go to business school and get a good job. And he basically, I don't remember the exact thing he said to me, but it was something along the lines of, well, why don't you learn how to invest in real estate? Why don't you should have kept that job and figured out why they're buying the apartment communities, how they buy them, what the exit strategy is. I think that's a pretty cool industry, dude. I think that job was maybe a better job than you think. And so a couple months went by, and this company I was working for wanted me to move to Boston to do outside sales. And I'm not a salesman. I realized during that job, I just suck at sales. If someone says no, I'm like, all right, well, have a good day, And so I knew I would not succeed in that job, and I did not want to move to Boston. My wife and I had a 1-year-old child, and Boston just wasn't somewhere I wanted to move to. So I called Wasatch back, and I said, hey, do you have any manager positions open? And they had one. And so, but I remember that the pay cut was like $20,000 a year, maybe more, because I was getting bonuses at this startup software company for sales, but they weren't great because, again, I sucked at sales. But it was a $20,000 base cut, and I said, I'll take it. And so Wasatch hired me back. I took a big paycheck, a big pay cut to go do that. And when I got there, I told Janae Jarvis, who's running Wasatch now.
Yeah.
I told Janae, I said, Janae, I don't want to just be an on-site manager. I want to be on your due diligence team. And I'll do it. You don't need to pay me extra. I just want to be on the due diligence team. Do you think you can make that happen?
And why did you want to be on the diligence team?
Because of what Jeff had told me, to learn how they buy apartment communities, what they're looking at, all of that stuff. So I got to work with, Deloy Hansen, and, his brother Randy and other individuals that are still with Wasatch, and do due diligences with them. And Deloy Hansen taught me how to do a market survey. And my first market survey was really bad, and he picked it apart. And so, I got some experience doing that, and then realized that business school probably wasn't the right path for me, that I should try and figure out a path in the apartment industry. And so that's what I decided to do. So I just started networking and found a regional manager job available a couple of years after I started with Wasatch, with a small management group here in Salt Lake called Evergreen Management Group. And they managed low-income housing tax credit properties and owned them and managed them. And so I was a regional manager for them for a year and learned the tax credit side of the business. And then randomly got a call from a For Rent magazine rep that said, hey, there's this company called Bridge that's looking for a regional manager. You're interested in talking to them? And I said no. I told her no. This company wants me to run the company in a few years. Like the owners of the company were aging towards retirement and had talked to me about taking over. And so
How old are you at the time, McNear?
I was 26.
So you would have in a few years taken over the company, potential?
I would have been like the president of the management company.
That's a pretty crazy opportunity.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought, no, this is like dumb. Like I should not entertain any other job offers. They were paying me, I remember it was $55,000 a year. And we had just had our second baby, and my wife wasn't working. And so I called her back and I go, wait, how much do you think they would pay? And she goes, I think they would probably pay a minimum of $65,000 plus a bonus. I said, tell them to call me. So Rich Stainer called me and said, hey, we have this open position. It's a regional manager for Salt Lake City and Tucson. And here's what we do. And he explained what they do, which is very similar to what we still do today, 21 years later. It's, they buy apartment communities that need a value add and they fix them up and improve the operations, add amenities, renovate a certain number of the interiors, and, obviously improve all of that NOI and the operations and expense management and everything, and sell them and provide a return to their investors. And I had never heard of, Wasatch's theory was more of a longer term hold, like 20 to 30 year hold. And so they had that type of investment. And Evergreen was, the tax credit was huge at the time. So they were tax credit investors. And then, so this was a totally different type of apartment investing and managing. And I thought, oh man, I should go work for them. This would be really cool to learn. I've obviously didn't learn all I needed to learn at Wasatch because I was just on their due diligence team, and I didn't learn everything I needed to know about tax credits, but I knew enough. But for some reason, what Rich was telling me just sounded awesome. It just sounded like that would be really fun. And so interviewed with them and took the job. And then I've luckily, Bridge has grown and I've been able to grow with them. Been here for 21 years.
Wow. 21 years. I feel like that's so unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Do you get a company for that long? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not common anymore.
Yeah. So you, throughout this journey, there's a couple interesting things you did that I feel are not as common today. I know, when you made the transition, it was for money, but there were some of the earlier decisions you made that were optimizing for learning. What would be your advice to people just starting out in their career when they have that trade-off of, should I take a job that pays me more, or should I optimize to take a job that I can learn more?
I would look, everybody's circumstance is different, right? You have to put food on the table. I would say if you can find a salary that can help you meet your needs, and needs meaning, shelter, a good place to live, and food on the table, you should take the job where you're going to learn, because the trajectory of income will increase at some point like a hockey stick if that's what you're focused on. Yeah. I think too many people are focused on having the nicest car and maybe they're paying more for their house than they should, or more for their apartment than they should. I think that, level of humility is important, and the learning is more important.
Earlier you were saying that you felt like one of the big inflection points was doing the mission. And that's when you became serious. I'm curious why that was the case.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Even on my mission, I was kind of more of the rambunctious missionaries. I followed the rules, but not like to the letter of the law. I didn't break any rules that would, get me sent home or anything. But like I'd play Nintendo with folks, and that was really shamed upon. Like I'd play Dr. Mario with with uh we called them investigators because they were learning about the church. I remember in Chihuahua, I met this family. They were musical artists, and they didn't really want to learn about the church, but they were fun to hang out with. And so we'd always just go over and hang out with them and play Dr. Mario Brothers because it was 120 degrees outside. So they'd let us come in, and the mom would make lemonade for us or horchata, and we'd just play Dr. Mario Brothers. That was actually like, I felt so guilty because that's really bad. Sounds weird that that's bad, but that was bad to do. So I was always, kind of breaking those types of rules versus trying to convince people to join the religion.
Yeah.
I didn't really, again, I'm not good at sales, but I like meeting people and getting to know them and becoming friends. And so that was more fun for me to just be friends with people in Mexico than try and convince them about my religion.
Yeah. Do you think you're an introvert? Is that,
No, I think I'm an extrovert.
you're an extrovert? Why do you think you're not good at sales? You just don't care enough to like try to sell somebody something?
I think if somebody wants something and you present it, then they'll buy it. I don't like convincing people that they need it. That part of, if I have to put food on the table, then yeah, I'll do it. But I don't like convincing people that they need what I'm selling.
Yeah. I imagine that actually makes people trust you more.
Maybe. I don't know.
Some ways, because some of your job right now, I imagine a lot of it is selling, right?
It's all selling, but I believe in what I'm selling.
Yeah.
For example, like I really enjoyed leasing apartments. When I was a leasing agent, that was really fun. But my first job as a leasing agent was in probably not the most desirable part of Salt Lake City. And sometimes people would come in and I could tell in 3 months, they probably wouldn't be stoked where they're living. So I wouldn't try to sell them very hard, but because I didn't want them coming in complaining 3 weeks later. Right. So, but the people that I knew would love that apartment home and love that community, I was like, it was so fun because they wanted it. They loved it. And so I was just basically, they would lease from me than someone down the street because they liked me.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't feel like a hard sell to me because we were presenting a really nice product and I was confident that I would take care of them when someone would break down in their apartment. I could make sure the maintenance guy fixed it. So I didn't feel like I was selling them anything they didn't need. So I actually enjoyed selling apartments.
So you get to Bridge, you have this new opportunity. What is going through your head in terms of where you want to end up in the company? Are you at this point being like, I want to eventually run the company. I have wild aspirations to grow to super senior leadership. What was going through your head?
Yeah, I set a goal. So I set a goal at some point. I don't remember what year it was. I think I was I was promoted to vice president in 2009. So I started at Bridge in 2004 as a regional manager. The company grew, and Rich promoted me to a vice president role. So I was now overseeing regional managers in 2009. I think a year or two after that, I made a goal to be the president of the company or another management company before I was 40. So by the time I just set a goal. I'm like, by the time I'm 40, I need to be the president of this company or another company because, I just needed, for a couple of things. I like to control culture and help create a good environment to work, but I also needed to, start saving money so I could at some point help my kids go to college and that sort of thing. So it was a little double. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it was a little bit two goals. One to make enough money to provide for my family, but two, to really be able to, create a workplace that people like to come to.
Mm. Talk to me about your family. You have you have two daughters?
Yeah. Yeah, we have two daughters. They are the oldest one's almost 25 years old, and the youngest is 22 years old.
And where did you meet you met your wife when you were how old?
I've known my wife since junior high. We did not date until college, but I've known her really well for a long time. Her older brother, Ryan, was my best friend my last 2 years of high school. So I was at their house all the time. So I've known her for a while.
What is that relationship in your kids? What has it taught you?
The relationship with my kids.
The relationship with your wife and your kids, your family, relationship with your family. What has it taught you?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever thought about what the relationship has taught me. I think that it's probably taught me a lot about love and how important having people really close to you matters in life. Because there's only a certain amount of people you can truly trust. And like, I love my wife, but I never knew how much you could love something until I saw that baby. Right. And then not just how much love you have for them, but how much you feel responsible. Like, as a baby, I just remember putting her in the car seat and putting her in the car and going for the first time, oh, I actually better be a good driver, because if I do something stupid, it's not just going to affect me, it's going to affect the kid in the car. So I think it's taught me mostly about love and a lot about responsibility.
Yeah. And you're mentioning you're going to Japan
Yeah.
in a few weeks. We are. What do you, maybe you can talk about why you're going?
Yeah. So both of our daughters are profoundly deaf. My oldest daughter, Peyton, was born without hearing. And Macy, my younger one, had hearing in one of her ears until she was about 20 months old, and for some reason lost it. Doctors don't know why either of them are deaf. And so we're going to Japan because Peyton plays soccer and she's on USA's national deaf soccer team, the women's team. And so they're having the Deaf Olympics in Japan this month. And so we're going to go watch her hopefully win a gold medal.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome.
She won a World Cup with the team a few years ago in Malaysia. And my wife was able to go. I couldn't make it, but I watched a lot of the games online. So this time I'm going.
How did they get into soccer? Did you put them into soccer?
Yeah, we put them in soccer at age 4. And Macy stopped playing in high school, but Peyton played all the way through college and still plays. So, she just loved it. They both loved it actually, but Peyton more than Macy.
Yeah. Wow. And what were some of the challenges, I guess, because obviously you didn't prepare for this. And what were some of the challenges of raising two daughters without hearing?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, there were several challenges because you just don't understand that world if you grow up hearing. And so there are challenges that you realize are easily overcomable. But there are definitely challenges. There's also benefits though, right? So you could vacuum while the baby was sleeping. You could, if you cussed, you could just turn around and cuss and they didn't know you were cussing. You could watch your surround sound and it really wouldn't wake them up unless the bass was too heavy. You didn't have to put a sign on the doorbell that said, don't ring the doorbell, right? The baby's asleep. So there's a lot of benefits. But the challenge with any hearing parent raising a deaf child, the biggest challenge is getting fluent language structure inside of that child's brain before age 5. And then after that, the challenge is dealing with how you think your child should be raised and how your child should learn versus the school system. Then the second challenge is, how do you get their friends to communicate with them so that they can have a peer group? And then the fourth thing would be, getting them into sports. How do you make sure that they are involved just like the hearing kids? So those are all separate and different challenges.
Yeah. Tell me about number 2, about the school system. And because I imagine that Yeah, because they went to a regular school.
They started out at the Utah Schools for the Deaf, and we took them out when my oldest daughter was after third grade. We put them in mainstream school.
Mm.
So it's a long story. You really want me to get into it?
If you're open to it.
I'm totally open to it. So, okay, it's a little controversial in the deaf community. When Peyton was born, we went all in on sign language. Okay, all in on sign language. So we have a person from the Utah Schools for the Deaf coming to our house once a week teaching us sign language. My wife and I are trying to learn sign language. Blah blah blah. But it's really hard to get fluent at any language. And when she was 10 months old, we switched from sign language to something called cued speech. It's spelled CUED. And we learned about cued speech randomly. Like the schools did not tell us about it. They didn't tell us it was an option. They told us, you either do sign language or you don't, and make your kid learn how to lip read. And so obviously sign language is the better option. But so we found out about cued speech from this family that lived and still lives up in Heber, which is about an hour and a half from here, just on the other side of Park City. And their family has a lot of the individuals in their family are deaf or hard of hearing, mostly due to nerve damage loss. And so they learned about cued speech and did it with their family. And the mom, Shelley, is a speech pathologist. And so very intelligent and a lot of history with like what works, sign language, cued speech, or, lip reading, whatever. So we went and met with her. And when I learned about it at first, I was against it. I thought, no way, we're not doing that. We're doing sign language. And she basically helped me understand the dynamics of the first thing I told you, which is getting language inside of a child by age 5. So, now that there's Google and everything, people could probably fact check me. But what I remember at that time was a child needs to have a fluent language structure, needs to internalize a fluent language structure by age 5. Otherwise, their learning disabilities multiply 6 times. So if you have a child and the doctor says, hey, sorry, your son or daughter cannot hear you unless you speak Russian, well, you're going to try and learn Russian. But to speak a fluent level of Russian before that child is 5 years old is really, really hard, almost impossible, unless you are immersed fluently in Russian. Like everyone around you speaking Russian, you're studying Russian, you're only speaking Russian, you're like English goes away. So it's the same with sign language, right? Like I go to work all day, I'm speaking English, and I come home and I got to revert back to this other language. It's, sign language is a language just like Spanish, Russian, English has its own way of conjugating, it has its own way of like where you put the adjective, and anyway, all that stuff. So it's a great language. It's awesome. Cued speech is not anti-sign language. Cued speech is a way of it helps you teach your child your language. So with hand shapes, so you make the sounds of what you're speaking visual to the child instead of doing a different language. So in cued speech, you can do it in any language, Spanish, English. I've actually taught Spanish speakers how to cue in Spanish. You make the sounds of the language you speak visual. So like hand shapes are consonant sounds and placements are vowel sounds. So like it would be like to, you, see me, but anyway, I could do a whole sentence like my name is Matt, So at first I was anti this. I'm like, no, on my mission, I was voted best Spanish speaker of all the gringos. And, I'm like, I think I have a proficiency with language and we're going to go this route. She's like, Matt, by the time Peyton's 5, he'll probably be at a 2nd grade level. And a 2nd grader, you're going to think you're fluent because a 9-year-old can have a really good conversation, but it's not fluent language. It's a 9-year-old level of language. And the average deaf adult at that time, and I think it's still true today, in America reads on a 3rd grade level. So they read English on a 3rd grade level. The reason is because 95% of deaf or hard of hearing kids are born to hearing parents. And those hearing parents try to learn sign language. But the chances of them learning a college level of that language is really slim. And so they're teaching that deaf kid or hard of hearing kid a 2nd grade level of sign language, not a college level of sign language. And so when that child then tries to learn a new language like English, they can't grasp it as well as somebody that learned a fluent language. It's like, you see it all over the world, like kids that grow up, understanding Spanish really well can then pick up on English really well. But if they learn a bad Spanish, they probably aren't going to be as good at English as they could have been. So it's the same with sign language. If they could have learned fluent sign language, then they could have learned English as their 2nd language. But we decided to go all in on cued speech because I talked to professors at Harvard that had written white papers on this. I talked to the guy that was running the sign language department at the University of Florida. So I did all this research at the age of 25, right? She was born when I was 25 years old, and we decided to go all in on cued speech to teach them fluent English. And so we went all in. I also learned that 10% of dads, at least at that time, of deaf kids learned how to communicate with their kids. So it's usually just the moms.
And only 10% of dads.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that statistic's true, but that's what these professors and the books I was reading were telling me. But it makes sense, right? Like, in a traditional home, the dad's going to work all day, the mom's home with the kids. So of course, typically the mom's probably going to be communicating and learning sign language better or more than the dad. But also I think too that I just think sometimes the dads just are a little embarrassed that their kids are deaf and they'd rather not learn how to communicate with them. But that's just my own bias.
Wow.
So I decided I wasn't going to be one of the 10%. I wasn't going to be one of the 90%. I was going to be one of the 10%. And so we went all in, and my wife and I would sit on, the couch every night, practicing vocabulary in cued speech and learning as fast as we could. So I think Peyton, my oldest daughter, was a little bit language delayed. But then what's awesome is when Macy was born, hard of hearing and then deaf, we were already fluent, and so she was able to see language from day one, whereas Peyton probably didn't see language until she was about a year old, really. So she was a little bit language delayed. Because if you think about it, hearing kids are hearing language all the time. Like if they're in their car seat and music's playing in your car, they're hearing language. If the TV's on and they're sitting there on their blanket, they're hearing language. So their brain's all constantly hearing language. Deaf kids are only getting language if they're looking at you signing. So to get a fluent language structure inside the brain of a deaf child is much more challenging than a hearing child.
Mm.
And then, then going to school. So they would come home from school and I'm on the road all the time. My wife had to, sign to them how to do their math, sign with them how to conjugate their verbs, sign with them how to write a full sentence, right? And so, and then, I know you only asked me about number 2, but it's kind of all intertwined. And then like at soccer practice, we couldn't just drop Peyton off at soccer practice or Macy off at soccer practice. One of us had to be there to interpret for the coach. So that was my wife, basically that was her job. She was an interpreter. If the interpreter at school would call in sick, my wife had to go be the interpreter at school. And so that was really her job for, people ask my wife, what do you do for a living? She's like, nothing. I'm like, stop saying nothing. Tell them you're retired, because you are. That was her job. And so on the weekends, I felt bad about that. So on the weekends at soccer games, I would always stand next to the coach and be the interpreter so that she could have a break. And that's how we did it. It was a lot of teamwork.
Wow. And you said that, and I imagine the friends thing was hard too. How did that work out?
Well, luckily, man, we raised our kids on the best street in the planet. We had two families, the Williams family next door to us and the Kafusi family across the street from us had kids, our kids same age, and they all leaned in and learned how to cue. And just, our kids were just part of the program. And then up the street, there was a girl who was born on, her name's Kate Arbin. She was my youngest daughter's best friend, and they had the same birthday, were the same age, and she learned how to communicate with her. And like Lene, another friend that went to school with Macy, who's still a close friend today, learned how to cue. So like my wife would do classes at the school. So if any of the kids at school wanted to learn how to do cued speech, they could. And then she'd also do one class a week at the house for the neighborhood kids, like of different ages. And a lot of the kids leaned in, and the neighborhood really, it takes a village, right, to raise a child. And man, we had the best village on the planet. So it was just, luck of the draw, luck of picking the right house and the right street and the right neighborhood to raise them. So yeah, we're super thankful for all of those families that helped out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, it's a cool story. It is really cool. And I like, as you were talking, what I was thinking about was how much you were doing at the time, right? I imagine like traveling all this, traveling all this time for work and growing your career and, putting your kids in soccer, getting them to the level where they're competing in the Olympics and learning, this new form of speech. I mean, how did you I'm struggling to understand how you managed your time and managed all of this.
Really it's just because my wife's the best person on the planet. I could go to work and be at work. She would do everything that the kids needed and take care of everything at home and let me really focus on my job. So, all the success, or if we are successful, it's all because of her. It would have been really hard to be able to focus on my job if she wasn't willing to do that. So I just compartmentalized things. When I was home, and when I was at work, I was at work.
You know what's so interesting though is one thing that I've noticed about you having, we've been trying to schedule this for the last year, I think, and you've been traveling or I've been traveling or whatever. We finally got it scheduled. But one thing I noticed about you is you're so responsive compared to other people that I'm like trying to schedule with at your level. Even me, I'm not super responsive, but you're just so responsive. I mean, to all the text messages and, you're keeping me updated with your plan. How do you manage that, Ben? If you're saying that when you're home, but you're also like very responsive. Is that a thing that people do? Like, do people know you as that? As being very responsive?
Yeah, you're not the first person that said that. I think that maybe it's a detriment in some aspects, but, maybe there's sometimes in a meeting where I might get sidetracked and respond to a text when maybe I should be focused on what's being said. But for some reason, I just don't like, look, there's emails that I'll just delete, right? Like there's sales emails I'll just delete. But when it's more than just somebody trying to sell me on something, I feel that there's a responsibility to communicate back. So maybe I shouldn't do it as well as I do, but for some reason, I just am obsessed about it. I just think communication's pretty critical.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I have no idea why.
But it's always been the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, my friends will tell you too. I'm the one that's always reaching out. Hey, how you doing? How have you been? Haven't talked to you for a while. So
yeah,
I've always been a pretty good communicator.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to the episode you did with Johnny, and it was really cool to hear. I don't know if you remember, it was probably a year or two ago, but you talked about how you're doing this new thing where when you're sitting on a plane or something right before it takes off, you'll text a few people that you may not have reached out to and just check up on them and see how they're doing.
Yeah, I still do that. I still do it. I don't have like a day or whatever. It's just if somebody's name comes to my brain, then I text them. And it's usually just a dumb text like, you're the man, friendly reminder, you're the man, exclamation point, or, hey, haven't heard from you for a while, hope all's well, you're awesome, just stupid like that. And I'll do it to employees sometimes too that I've become friends with over the years. But mostly it's friends outside of work, and mostly, so it's a variety of people, but if somebody's name comes to my brain, I think that's telling me something. And so I usually reach out with it.
Why are relationships so important to you? I know in the episode you talked also about relationships being the most important thing in your life.
I get a lot out of people, I get a lot out of those relationships. People make me better. Other people make me better. And I to this day learn something new from every relationship I have on how they're approaching life or on what's affecting them. And then at the same time, I love it when people tell me I help them with struggles or in times of need. That you'd be amazed at how many times I've texted people and they've replied back saying, how did you know I needed this text? And then, so I think it's double-sided. I get a lot out of it. And then I love it if I'm able to provide something beneficial to other people.
Yeah. Wow. When you think about your career 30 plus years in, how has your motivation source changed over the years? Because I imagine in your early part of your career, you might have had a different motivation source than you do today.
Yeah, man. Yeah. The motivation source changes all the time, like all the time. It's, I don't know. That's a good question. I think right now, I'm, more motivated about, the impact I can have on the company and on the employees of the company and the trajectory of where we're going. Versus I think in the past I was more worried about how much I can make, and so that I can, provide what I want for my family. Now it's, that's still a motivator, obviously, you need an economic engine, but I think right now it's more about enjoying things versus striving for things. Still obviously lots of goals and lots of things we need to accomplish as a company and lots of things we need to accomplish as a family, but it's more about enjoying the day, enjoying the week, and then worrying about the future.
Yeah. And when you finally hit that goal that you set, to be a president or whatever before 40, did you realize anything about setting goals and how you, because sometimes I set these goals and then when you hit it, you're like, oh, wow, my life is kind of the same. Hasn't changed that much. I mean, maybe you're in an absolute sense it has, but your relative experience feels kind of the same because it's a gradual kind of evolution. Did that evolve your thinking of how you set goals and why it matters?
I think it made me realize that if you don't set a goal, you can become complacent. And if you set a goal and you're tracking how close you're getting to that goal, then you remain focused on it, and your way of thinking is different. I look back and I was always uber focused on my job at hand. Like the most important thing was getting my job done as a vice president or a regional manager. But then at the same time, you were contemplating chess moves on what you needed to do at that company to impress the leaders of that company, or did you need to network better? And so, you really leaned into, what relationships really mattered in your industry. And so I think setting goal, I think it made me realize that like if you set a goal, it just forces your brain to think about things maybe differently or the right way so that you can hopefully accomplish them. You don't accomplish every goal, obviously, but it helps your brain think appropriately to achieve it.
Yeah. Have you set new goals?
Yeah, I don't know that they're like that specific.
Yeah, as the one before.
It's that one. But I set new goals all the time. I don't really have any goals that they're not like business goals. Like I have obviously goals for the company, but for myself in terms of business, I don't really have any goals set. I still have personal goals that I set all the time.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a blast.
Yeah, I wish I could ask you all the same questions and learn more about you, man.
We'll do. We could do another podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you should start a podcast about that. But thank you for sharing everything. I mean, it's really, for me personally, it's really inspiring to see how you could accomplish so much. But also, I think what's really interesting about you and your energy is you're very even with your energy. And I think that's really inspiring to be able to like do all the things you do, manage all the things you're managing, make time for relationships. I mean, before this, we were talking about how you're going to, is it Austin, this weekend? Oh, Kansas City this weekend for your friends, not nonprofit staff. And you're a very inspiring example of a well-rounded person. And like, I appreciate getting to know you, and I thank you for sharing everything.
Well, thanks, man. That's nice of you to say. I don't think of myself that way. And the reality too, though, is a lot of what's happened to me has been just pure luck, right? And like the company growing, the mentors I had, like I said, the street we raised our kids on, like a lot's luck. And well, I think I've been fairly successful in this industry and with my family. Like so much of it's luck. Like you got to set goals, but man, I pinch myself sometimes. Like, one bad turn could have gone a different way, right? So I appreciate you saying that. I think that my wife could probably disagree with you times she sees me angry, but I try to keep it even. Try to do an even keel.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thank you, man.
Thanks for letting me do this with you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.